chat. Oh, right. So, and we're recording, just so you know. You all just got that message. Thank you, Lorna. Lorna is our sole text person tonight, so I'm really grateful for that. And I'm going to suggest that we are going to have breakouts. So you can save up some of your thoughts throughout the evening for those breakouts. What else was I going to say? Oh, yes. And I have not force muted anyone. So everyone is free to mute and unmute. So I would ask that you stay on mute unless there's a time for you to speak, because it can be distracting. And we are recording, so hopefully that is okay with everyone. We will probably share this as an educational tool to help other people submit. So if you don't want to be on video, you have the option of turning that off. You can change your name if you want some privacy, or make it so they can't see your last name. So that's up to you. And thank you. So we got some introductions coming in the chat, and people are from different areas of Waterloo and Toronto. Yeah, Ottawa. Oh my goodness. Well, welcome everyone. So I'm actually, while we're all coming and collecting, I'm going to pass it over to Val. So she's going to do our land acknowledgement tonight.
Good evening, everyone. When I give a land acknowledgement, or when I listen to one, I approach it as a sort of prayer or meditation, as well as a call to action. Thus, we acknowledge the sacred land on which we live and meet today. Humans and other than humans have lived here for thousands and thousands of years. This land and its beings have been cared for by diverse First Nations people, including the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Huron-Wendat, the Petun, and most recently, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. Many years ago, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy and the Confederacy of the Ojibwe and allied nations agreed to peaceably share and care for the land and living beings around the Great Lakes through the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant. More recently, white European settlers took over this land through a series of treaties and purchases and took control of its living beings and resources for their own gain. We therefore acknowledge that the land here on Turtle Island was unjustly taken from the First Nations peoples. Supporting Indigenous land-back movements is a critical part of reconciliation. Additionally, connecting to what we are speaking about tonight, there is a strong alignment between clean energy project development and the principles of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. We understand reconciliation must include Indigenous-led clean energy projects that empower communities. There are almost 200 Indigenous communities in Canada involved in clean energy projects that each produce over 1 megawatt, roughly the amount of electricity consumed by 400 to 900 homes annually. If projects are Indigenous-led, a truly just energy transition is possible, and this will be one critical piece of the process of reconciliation, and it will fuel a just transition to a sustainable economy for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Val. So I'm going to ask Lynn again if you're ready to do a little bit more of an introduction or not. Maybe not. No, Lynn is dealing with
Colleen, thank you. I am emailing people who don't necessarily have the Zoom. So I am going to continue doing that. And but I could say that we're very, very pleased to have Climate Messengers as our co-sponsors tonight, along with Toronto 350, ClimateFast, and many other groups. It's a collaborative effort to get as many as possible submissions in. It's extremely important. We want to be happy with what they come out with on March 29th. And we want to be able to raise a ruckus then if they haven't come out with what we want. But they're asking us right now, what do you want us to have? We got to tell them, and then we got to make sure they actually deliver. So it's really great that everyone's here tonight. And I think I can just introduce Tam. Tam Miere with Climate Messengers will start us off. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Lynn. Welcome everyone, and thanks so much for coming and participating in this really important chance to have a say in basically the next 10 years of Canada's climate policy. So I'm going to speak very briefly about this opportunity and kind of how it came about and how we hope we can help you through it. So I'm going to share my screen. I only have a couple of slides, but I think we'll do that. It always takes a second, so if you just see black, don't panic. It's just switching displays. Okay, can everyone see my slide working with the Canadian Net Zero Emissions Accountability Act? Good. Okay, so so where did this opportunity stem from? This really comes from, some of you may have helped when we were campaigning to strengthen Bill C-12. Back in the summer, Bill C-12 was the climate accountability legislation that was being amended and debated, and it did get passed. It's not as strong as we would have liked, but it is what we have to work with. And so now we're going to work with it. So Canada's climate accountability legislation says by law that there has to be a 2030 target, and the environment minister has to publish the plan for how to reach that target within 6 months after Bill C-12 was passed. So that deadline has come and gone. It would have been December 29th. Thankfully for the government, they also put into the law an extension. So this is the hard deadline, March 29th, for when the environment minister has to publish the plan of how they're going to reach the 2030 target. This is a moment of opportunity for us because also by law, the environment minister has to consult the public about what should go into that plan. And in addition to that, he also has to publish a report on the consultations, which means he actually has to reply to our submissions. Now, this public consultation has taken the form of a survey. It was open over the holidays and it closes on Friday. So, of course, being over the holidays and a pretty short window, it really wasn't on a lot of people's radar. And so that was something that at Climate Messengers we wanted to fix. And we also wanted to try to provide something. There's a lot of people, myself included, who just don't know what to write in this survey. And I'm going to show you what a couple of the questions look like. But we wanted to provide something for people that don't have a whole lot of time to give them some ideas that they can quickly reword and actually participate. They might not be climate experts, but they want to have a say, and this hopefully will give them a chance to participate. And so what we did was we made this toolkit, and I will walk you through this document in a second, but a few points from previous meetings that I want to clarify right up front. The survey itself is meant for individuals, not groups. So although some groups seem to be like preparing briefs and stuff, I'm not exactly sure how they're submitting those. The survey that I'm going to show you tonight is meant for individuals to participate in. And the idea is, our goal is that we want to get as many individuals as possible to participate in this consultation. So what we're asking you, if you're part of a group, not only, you know, can you please participate, but also share this toolkit and encourage as many people from your organization or, you know, friends, family, whatever. I emailed my dad, he did it. So I am going to, I have to stop sharing just for 1 second to get to the toolkit because I'm in PowerPoint right now and it won't let me go to my browser. But here we go. Okay, so can you all see the toolkit right now?
Sort of.
Can you see a like a Google Doc, and I'm scrolling up right now?
Yeah, Cam, just to let you know,
Yes.
if you stop sharing again and then select that window when it says you should be able, right now we're seeing your whole desktop.
Okay.
So Yeah.
Let's try that
So
again.
try one more.
Google Chrome, have your say. Let's try that. Okay, is that better?
No.
You can just see the application, right?
Yeah, I can just see Chrome now.
Okay. Okay, so to just briefly tell you about this toolkit. This is a Google Doc. It's a very large document. It has a ton of information. It's not meant to be read the whole thing. I mean, if you want to read the whole thing, by all means, go for it. But you can use it without doing that. And so what we have here on the second page is this kind of choose your own adventure. How do you want to use the toolkit? If you want to go straight to the Environment Minister's survey without reading anything more, then you can click this link and it will take you to the survey. If you want to go straight to some sample answers that we've prepared for each question, you can go down in the doc to sample answers. Now, the other thing to know about navigating this document is the document outline is very useful. So if you don't see this in your window when you open it up, if you just see this little icon, click the icon, and then you can see all of the headings and subheadings. The other thing to know is you can double click at the top of any page and it'll bring you back up to the top. So, okay, so just one more point I'll make before I hand it back over to Colleen. So we've got, these sample answers that people can reword, but, just provides a little bit of inspiration. We've got an explanation of the survey itself. And this is the point I want to make. The survey is made of 6 questions, and question 1 is the biggest because it has all of these different sections. And so this is what it looks like. And each of these fields only allows 1,000 characters. So we've crafted our sample answers to reflect that. And then questions 2 through 6 are a little bit different, and we have lots of suggestions for how to manage those. The last point to make about the survey is that you can save your progress and come back to it. And I've done this several times now. I haven't finished my submissions yet, but you can save it at any point, and it just gives you a link, and it saves everything that you put in, and you can go back to it. Okay, and then the more information part, we have for each of these sections, buildings, electricity, transportation, all of these, we've outlined what the Liberals promised and what was in the mandate letters. And that's kind of how we crafted the information. It's like, okay, the government promised these things, now this is what we can ask them to do. So that is pretty much all I have to say. There's going to be a time for Q&A. So I think I'll just pass it on to Colleen, and I'm happy to answer any questions afterwards.
Thank you, Tam. So this is an excellent resource for us, full of details. So if you, I'm going to do a kind of like a high level overview of some ideas. And I see that there's a hand up. We're going to suggest that is it about a technical issue, or if it's about a Q&A issue, we suggest you put it in the chat if you're able to, so that we can come back to it. We'll have a Q&A session, okay? Great. Okay, perfect. So I want to invite you, just before I screen share, we're going to have a breakout. And so when I'm going over some of these high-level ideas, I invite you to think about what stands out for you and what you'd like to discuss further in the breakout, whether it's one of those sections that you just saw, like you really are keen on commenting on transportation. And I'm hoping that someone can put the link in the chat to that toolkit so people can start looking at it too if they want to. And I'm going to ask that that perhaps Lorna or Raleigh or Tam could put the link in. Yay, thank you very much. Okay, and I'm going to start screen sharing and just go through some high-level thoughts and ideas. And while I do that, you can think about questions and you can put them in the chat if you wish and you have a question, because we will have a Q&A section. And if something stands out to you that you really want to return to or talk about in detail, let's bring that to the breakout, and that would be wonderful that we can have a discussion there. So first of all, I have been following the federal promises since the throne speech in 2020. And I've been watching the progress through to the mandate letters that went to all the ministers just very recently. And this comment period actually offers us a chance to talk about some of the things that may have come up for us throughout all of that time. So I just want to say, first of all, that I want to encourage you. You have shown up here and you have shown initiative to do this. So I want to talk a little bit about our input. And I know that Tam touched on this already, so why comment? The more of us who say, in whatever way we're able to, that we care, this matters to us, and why, whether you do that in a very simple way or whether you use the toolkit and you go into all the details that they've so kindly provided us, both of them count. And what it does is it adds up, and it adds up to there are percentages even that we can look at, like 3.5% acting together in nonviolent demonstration can create complete change in a government. 25% acting in modeling something can create change in your neighborhood. So it's really important that we all do this and that we all share, like Tam suggested. So I'm going to suggest that you share the link. And I'm also going to suggest that you just talk about what you're doing and why to anyone and everyone. And then, you know, even if they don't do this comment period, you're planting a seed. But it would be great to get more and more people to do this one. So, I mean, the second point I wanted to just talk about was your own voice. Now, it's really important that we all say similar things, yes, but also I think what you can add as a person, if you really think about it, I'm going to suggest you think about this and maybe for the breakout as well. So what do you really care about? And what are you worried about? And what do you know a lot about? And like, are you working with a group? Are you working professionally in an area where you have some special insight? Because this comment period allows you to elaborate on different things. So if you know something, for example, maybe I'm going to use retrofit. Maybe you're trying to do a retrofit. Maybe your son works in construction. Maybe your daughter is part of a community effort to do retrofits at scale. So you might have something extra to say in that section, and I'm gonna suggest that's really important. So I want to talk a little bit about the overall vision, and so we need change. So how could things or must things be different? I want to encourage thinking about this and touch on like some high-level points here that seem to be echoed by Climate Messenger, by Lead Now, by Elizabeth May, by, you know, everyone we're listening to, by David Suzuki. But so the thing here is that we are presented by the government with boxes, right? Survey boxes to fill in. But I'm just going to extend that metaphor a little bit, encourage people to think outside the box a bit, you know, and what is the change that we need to see? And so on that note, one of the big things that keeps coming up again and again is that Canada has a really big fossil fuel blind spot. We still have this. We are still enabling continued fossil fuel production, and we need a full commitment to renewables. So this is high level idea that I wanted to present. So things like stop expanding fossil fuel projects, canceling the TMX, canceling CGL, ending all fossil fuel subsidies, not just inefficient ones, that type of thing we can reinforce for each other. One of the things that I've read is that incremental change is no longer enough. So we're still subsidizing the oil and gas industry, and we are suggesting now, which is an improvement, that we're going to cap. We're going to cap emissions from the industry, but we haven't yet admitted that we need to cap production itself, right? So we can keep pushing them to think about how we have to honestly admit that we need to phase down the production and not keep enabling it. So that's one thing that keeps recurring among people's different comments. A second thing is this still represents too little too late. So we need to ramp up ambition, and we need to just simply spend what's needed to get the job done. And one group of people who are saying this very well are, I don't know if you've heard about it, the Climate Emergency Unit with Seth Klein. So it's called the Climate Emergency Unit. And one of their big tenets is just spend what's needed. You've done it during COVID, you did it during wartime. So that's interesting. Now, very briefly, I don't have a lot of time to talk about numbers here, and I want to give you time for breakouts, but we have moved from a commitment to 19% below 2005 levels, all the way up to a commitment to 45%. But you will see in the toolkit, and you will see in many other sources, that our fair share in Canada is 60%. So we're still not there. And I just wanted to show there is a progression. We're getting better and better, but we're still not there, right? So we need to ask for more. We also need to ask for more of an investment in international climate finance and in our own. The number given is 2% of the GDP. So we're not there yet either. So we can push. That's what I'm suggesting. And so lastly, I want to just say that we need a full transformation. We need a complete transformation. How do we get where we need to go? And I really think there's 2 points that are standing out again in this plan that I want to emphasize that isn't getting us quite there. So, you know, I'll share the next screen. So, okay, I'm noticing there's a largely market-dependent plan here, right? It's centering industry and technology. And I think we need to shift to talking about, and not just me, I'm reading this in lots of different sources, a just transition focus instead of, so I want to just read, like, I would suggest reading Indigenous Climate Action reports. They're really, really good. And I just wanted to quote one thing here. The focus on tech in these plans can serve to actually divert our resources and our attention away from the deeper structural changes that are necessary. So it becomes less about tackling climate change and more about finding ways to drive profit making and economic growth. And I do see this in the plans. And I can't really go into the slide, and I'm sorry about that, but they center things like capturing and storing carbon. That's a huge part of the plan, right? Small nuclear reactors, hydrogen, so that we can keep making fossil fuel, and then we can convert the carbon into something that we supposedly can use in many, many different ways. Problems with these are that they're expensive, they're unproven, they require a huge centralized energy infrastructure that will perpetuate inequities and will not shift our society in the way that we need to be shifted. So I've referenced the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty here in the orange a couple times during my talk. And I would just like to say it's a really excellent resource. And they have shown how we can go to renewables with only 7% green hydrogen in the end and like it's so little of the rest of the things that are in the plan, that a full commitment to renewables is a definite thing we can push for, right? And it's not quite there. Another problem is offsets. So the offsets, and I'm going to this slide now because I think the offsets connect with the need for deep social and economic change, a transformation again. And what this means for your comment, I think that in any section of your comment, you could integrate some of these new thoughts or these pushing just a little bit. For example, let's go back to retrofit. Say you're trying to do retrofit and you can't afford it. Your neighbor can't afford it. Your whole community can't afford it. That's a justice issue, right? So you might also push in there for them to do something less incremental with the retrofit programs and more helpful. Could be a crown corporation that helps fund the retrofits at scale. But this is also about Indigenous rights. In our land acknowledgement, Val mentioned the violation of land rights that it's being used to push through extractive projects. So so that actually can be integrated in maybe your comments in the oil and gas section if you're giving them, right? So I also like to point out that Seth Klein and the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives has a wonderful outline of what the just transition should look like for workers. See that transformation is possible, and that I think that the justice elements and the just transition elements could also be worked into different parts of the plan if you so desire. Making it again about things that you know about and that you care about. You can think about your family, you can think about your community, and what you need to make this big shift, these big changes and what they need to make the big changes that are necessary and possible. So having said that, I hope that you've been able to think about some things that you do care about and that you want to learn more about for the breakout. And we are going to assign you to the breakouts in a few minutes, but we're first going to have some questions, some Q&A time. And I don't know if anybody put any in the chat or if you want to just raise your hand. We already have a raised hand. And I'm going to pass it back to Lynn so she can moderate this section.
Thank you, Colleen, and thank you, Tam, for giving us our start tonight. Lots of information on how to approach filling in this government questionnaire. So it's not intimidating for us, right? So it's accessible. It's something we can do, and we know our communities across the country are all doing it, and tens of thousands of people will write in. This is what we need to counter the influence of the oil and gas lobby, and give our government the confidence that the public is behind them in moving forward rapidly and boldly on climate justice and climate action. So I just wanted to say that I did put a couple of links in the chat there, the Indigenous Climate Action Report and the fossil fuel exit strategy that the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty has put together. You don't need those in order to answer this this consultation, but just there if you want to delve into more information on how are we really going to do this transition that we need. We're giving them the political will. Remember, that's our job, to say we're behind you, we want this to happen, and we really want the renewables done, all the things that Colleen has talked about. So I'll stop repeating those wonderful presentations, and I'll just ask if we've got any comments or questions. And I'll ask, we also have with us tonight Raleigh Montpellier and Ken Love, also of Climate Messengers. So this is how we're going to do our small groups, as we have a set of people who can lead them. But in case you have additional points you wanted to emphasize just now, and if you have a question, if you're here as a participant, we do have a few minutes now for questions, just put them in the chat or raise your hand. We do have one raised hand, and we can go, maybe we should go to the raised hand right now. Is that Prabir Neoji? Do you want to speak? Go ahead.
A request and a comment. The request is, could you repeat or put in the chat box the URL for the toolkit? I didn't get it all, but the comment is this: I will not be alive in 2050. But my daughters and my granddaughters will. And I think what you need to do is to bring home the cost, not to me, but to my daughters and granddaughters, of what happens if we continue on the present way. That's one way of looking at it, which I don't find. You say we need to do this, we need to do this, we need to do this. And the people who want to continue with business as usual say why. The people today are not willing to pay the price.
Thank you. Bring in the moral argument, the generational justice argument.
It's a personal on my part. That am I going to live a lifestyle which will make things worse for my daughters and granddaughters? That's not a moral argument.
No, it is intergenerational justice that we're talking about here, and caring. And I will, at this point, I'll also say, when you have the opportunity to put thoughts like that in 150 words and send it as a letter to the editor, please do, because we need not only to give our views to the government, we need to continue making the public conversation, the public narrative about these really big changes that we need to see happening, and we need to see happening fast. Lots of people don't understand how fast we need these changes to happen. It's this decade up to 2030 that really matters. These next few years will set the pace for whether we're going to cut significantly in that 40 to 60% range by 2030 or not. And we can't afford to fail. We need to make it happen. And so, in the public realm, make your comments with letters to the editor or to radio shows, make your comments make sure this gets discussed in the public. Okay, did we have another question? Do you want to put your hand down, Prabir, on the, do you know how to do that on your reactions? Okay, so there are comments going into the chat. I'm not sure if they're questions or more information. Oh, here we have one. What are the 2 or 3 biggest gaps or highest leverage solutions not currently on the government's plans or not at the right level that we need to ensure is in our submission? So I'm going to start by saying retrofits are maybe 10% of what they need to be, the current funding. It is not what we need to have, and they don't have the staff to even answer the inquiries that people are bringing to them. So it has to be structured as well. And Colleen started talking about this, to address the community level and not just individual homeowners. We need to go to scale. We need to leverage communities. So we need a different model, and we need a lot more resources put into retrofits. That's one. Did any of our other resource people want to mention one that you would like to see emphasized in here?
And I think I maybe want to
Colleen,
open it up to, I want to open it up to one of the other resource people to fill this in, but I think one of the biggest things is that, you know, going full out on renewables. Like, I mean, instead of doing things that prolong the ability to continue creating oil and gas in the first place. So I don't know if any of the other resource people want to speak to that a bit more, but yeah.
I'll speak to that, Colleen. It's Rolly, my hand is up there. The one thing that I think is missing in a lot of the government, documentation is, of course, a set plan to start the phase out or the phasing out of fossil fuel production. Now, there's some talk, of course, about putting a cap on emissions, but there's also a lot of pressure by big oil to have a cap. Not on production, but a cap on, for example, cap per unit. In other words, have less emissions than 1 barrel of oil, which is an improvement. But if you produce more barrels of oil, then of course you're increasing production anyway. So I think that whole aspect of capping emissions, I do not trust that the government has a very serious handle on that. And that's the one thing I would love to see out of this consultation personally.
Thank you. I'm going to jump in and say that public engagement is a huge area that we're not doing enough on. And if you can believe it, Canada Summer Jobs this year, my sister, Lee Adamson, who's with Green Neighbors Network, does a ton of work to try to mobilize communities. Climate change is not a priority area for Canada Summer Jobs this summer. Can you believe it? I just was shocked. So we need to tell them that every opportunity that's there to engage the public, we need to use that. I know they have an area on food and nutrition. I don't know if there's someone who wants to pop in and say what you think is most needed for the changes in food. I know we have some food people on the call. Just raise your hand if you would like to. I don't see any hands.
I'm here.
Oh,
I don't know how.
Jump in. Jump in. Is that Joe? Go ahead, Joe. Yeah. Go
Hi.
ahead.
So there's a couple of things, and I think climate Farmers for Climate Action talks a lot about the carbon drawdown capacity and potential of regenerating soil, and doing no-till, doing proper ruminant grazing strategies, which sort of flip and reverse the damage that can be done by factory farming of cattle. So there's those things, but there's also a bunch of things within the broader food system that are not really being looked at or addressed. And everything from how close is the food grown to how it's grown. And in a winter country like ours, as we're depending on a very extended supply chain, which creates a lot of emissions, what are the lowest emission ways that we can be growing our own food during the winter? Big gaps there, almost no discussion whatsoever. And it's a lot more than just climate change that we affect when we talk about fixing the food system. And I think another piece that is kind of less discussed that it should be is the emissions, the methane emissions, which are much more impactful, even though they are a smaller percentage. And there's a lot of that associated with mishandling of compost and organic waste. And we still have no strategies for most high-rise buildings. There's no systems in place. So there's a whole bunch of gaps that relate to the food system, whether it's procurement, processing, transport, and consumption and waste that need to be addressed in relation to climate change. Because the government doesn't have a central body looking at food, it sometimes seems difficult to be able to communicate in a effective fashion how the food system approaches can make a big difference to climate change.
Yeah, and you're making me think, Joe, that we also need to have consultation on these specific areas that can engage the public and get the great ideas that community groups have acted on by the government, whether it's retrofits or food, whichever area. There's a lot of very knowledgeable people in the community. We need to get that knowledge being taken up and used by government, because we need a team approach to bringing our emissions down, that's for sure. And there are other GHGs, as you said, Joe, methane and nitrous oxide, I believe it's also another one in farming. So we need that. Now we have about a minute and a half or something to our breakouts, and I have a couple more hands. I think we maybe take the first one that I saw. Who is that? Jagit and Amrit. I'm not sure we have time for anyone else, but let's take yours.
Okay,
Thank
I've
you.
been involved in food issues for a long time. And I felt that in this, I've been going through the toolkit and reading. I haven't started writing my submission yet. But since I feel I know a lot about agriculture, that part has not been presented well in my view, because agriculture, changing that can help in a lot of areas. It's not just the use of fossil fuels that are used in large machines, the farming tractors and things are for growing the crops. It's also the heavy use of fertilizers.
Right.
Not only kills the biology in the soil, and there's a large amount of leaching into the groundwater, which is polluting the waters, creating algae, and harming the fish and that.
Yeah, we really need a holistic approach that respects the ecology, right? That's what I'm hearing you say.
That's right. And one of the things that actually mentioned in the toolkit, that the carbon sequestration is not really, can't be done a lot in changing the elect, because some of the farmers have asked that they should be paid to sequester carbon. But when agriculture is done the right way, it is organic, regenerative agriculture, it does sequester carbon deep into the ground.
Okay, I'm going to have to wrap you up there, because I'm sorry, who's speaking, please?
I just want to mention one more thing.
Okay, very brief, because we're going to go into our groups. And I want to add that, by the way, we're going to come back after the groups for about 10 or 15 minutes to close up. And we will have more discussion there. So we can come back to some of these topics at that time. And you can also discuss them in your breakout groups. I'll mention that we have some comments in the chat, which you can take a look at, including the need to increase our carbon price higher, that's there, and several other comments We will save the chat. Hopefully we can save the chat. We will send a follow-up letter tomorrow to everyone. Like if some people leave now and you don't go into the groups, just know that you should have a letter in your box tomorrow with some of the links and information that we're giving you tonight. So you have additional, but hopefully you can stay. We do want to get into our groups as one of our, yes, we want to get into our groups so that we can get our half an hour in small groups and people can get a start on filling in the forms. You don't need to complete it tonight. You can continue. You can save what you've done and continue again the next day. So it doesn't have to all be done at once, but we do want to help people get started. So I think we're just going to go straight into the groups. So I'm going to go back to Colleen, who's going to lead us into the groups, right? Go ahead, Colleen.
Hey, Lynn, didn't you say I could talk at this time? I thought you said.
Okay. I did say that, but I didn't see your hand up, so I didn't.
Well, I was
call
doing
on
like
you.
this. I don't know how to put
Were
that
you?
up.
Okay,
So-
you got
so
a
Ken-
minute. Go ahead.
Yeah,
1 minute, Ken. Go ahead.
Ken.
All right. Now, Tam, can you help me out on this? Can you pull up the document there, that Google sheet?
Oh dear.
Okay, I will do that. And don't forget, you only have 1 minute.
Oh, come on,
Yeah.
it's with two.
No, well, we want to get into groups,
Now,
Ken, and
Tam,
we will
Tam,
also come back after. Go
Tam,
ahead.
can you go to file there on
We can
the?
talk after.
Yeah, here. So Ken, I think I know what Ken wants to say. So maybe I can say it very quickly because I forgot to mention. We highly recommend that people, if they feel something's missing from the toolkit or they don't agree with some of the things that we put in, we highly recommend that you add your own viewpoints before you share it. So what I think Ken wants me to do is show you. You can make a copy of this. So you just go to File, make a copy, and then you are able to edit your copy. So the comments about the agriculture that things were missing, fix it and send it out to your friends. Add stuff about retrofits. Make it your own. So
Well,
we
Tam,
want as many voices as possible, as many varied voices as possible.
That's right. And if you have specific wording that you would suggest for one of those areas, send it to me, like not more than 200 words. I think it's 200 words max for those little sections. And I can include it in what we send out to people. So if you're passionate about one of those areas, then you would like to say it, email it to me, because we will have limited time now tonight because we're going to go into the groups. Over to you, Colleen.
Okay, great. So I just want to explain what's happening with the breakouts and how you can choose your breakouts. So we're going to actually be randomly assigning breakouts, and you have to click the button that says join, and then you'll be spirited off to a breakout. So just want to let you know that, and hopefully you've had time to think about what you really want to discuss in the breakout, and any further questions or resources that you might have for your facilitator. So with that, I will give it over to Lorna so we can be assigned.